Okay, now if you've seen my last video, I talked about how Genshin didn't feel very fun anymore and how there's no new content, yada yada. But if you guys are aware of Genshin leaks, you most likely have seen some new content and characters that are coming out in version 2.8 of Genshin. Now, there are leaks about the maps and weapons and other stuff, but I mean, if you saw the title and thumbnail, it's pretty obvious what I'm going to be talking about today. Now, I'm going to be honest, I am around 2 to 3 months early with this video, but nevertheless, Shikano in Heizou is sick. First off, he's the first male Catalyst user. Now, 90% of the people probably just clicked out the video the second I said Catalyst, but just stay with me for a sec. Personally, I don't really like Catalyst. I mean, I made an entire video on it, but the thing that makes me like Heizou is that he's a melee character. Sort of like how Child uses a bow, but he basically just turns that bow into swords and becomes a sword user. But to really condense it, Heizou is a main DPS animal Catalyst user with a really cool kit and honestly, sick animations. First off, his normal attacks are really cool. Now, another good thing about Heizou is that you're probably actually going to be using his normal attacks. Unlike Ayato, who has one of the coolest normal attacks in my opinion, but you literally never use it when you're fighting anyone. Next in this kit is his elemental skill. Now, I should just say now that this is the ability that's going to be doing most of your damage. When you hold down your elemental skill, you start to get these so-called declension stacks. Now, what they essentially do is increase the damage of that skill by how many times you stack it. When you get 4 stacks, which is the max, you get another effect called Conviction, which increases the damage even more. Now, I'll talk more about this later in my team section, but it seems like while you're charging up your skill, you're going to want to shield so you don't get kicked out of this animation. But if you have his level 50 talent, you get a declension stack when you swirl any kind of element. So with just this talent, you theoretically don't ever need to charge up your skill. So for example, if you have a sub DPS that can apply an element off field and normal attack with Heizou just until you trigger 4 swirl reactions, you can get all 4 stacks and just tap your elemental skill instead of needing to hold it down. Apart from his level 50 talent, his first constellation gives him a declension stack when he just enters the field. All in all, this one ability in particular seems really cool, and if I'm gonna be honest, I can't wait to play it. Lastly, his ult. Now, it's called Windmuster Kick, but I'm just gonna call it the Cannonball. Now, when you use your ult, you kick out this big ass wind ball that deals AoE ammo damage. Now, that's the main part of that ult, but there's also another effect that I'll try to explain as simply as possible. When you hit an enemy affected by Hydro, Pyro, Cryo, or Electro, they'll be afflicted with something called Windmuster Iris, which explodes after a moment, however long that is, and deals an extra burst of damage with that element they're affected with. This extra ability can only affect a maximum of 4 people, which honestly isn't that big of a deal because if you're fighting a horde of enemies and have them grouped up, it'll hit sort of everyone anyway. Alright, that's his kit. Now, let's talk about his artifact builds, which is actually really simple. Saying that he's a main DPS animal user, there are a couple of builds to go with. First off, you can run him with sort of Zhao's artifacts and give him 2-piece Verdescent Veneer and 2-piece Glad, Shimenawas, Echoes, or Vermilion. Another set that'll probably be pretty good on him, it would be 4-piece Shimenawas, which could be his best in slot, but I'm not sure whether you're going to be normal attacking with him a lot, so I'll make another video about this when he actually comes out. Now, because he's an animal Catalyst user, like Sucrose, you can run him with 4-piece Verdescent Veneer and just use him as a support character. But if I'm going to be honest, I don't know why anyone would, because his kit isn't tailored to be a support except for his level 70 talent, which increases your party's elemental mastery by 80 when you hit someone with your elemental skill. Now, I'll touch up more on this later, but if you're going to be running him in a taser team as the on-field attacker, then 4-piece VV will probably be better to swirl Hydro and Electro. Okay, his artifact sets are pretty easy to understand, but now let's go over his weapons. First off, let's talk about his best 4-star options. Now, if I'm going to be honest, he doesn't have some of the best free-to-play options, so sorry free-to-play players. But some good free-to-play options would probably be Frostbearer, which just has an alright base attack with attack as the substat, or probably the better option, Mapamare, giving you elemental mastery as the substat, which doesn't really matter much for Heizou, but the passive gives you an elemental damage bonus when you trigger an elemental reaction, which is pretty good for Heizou because you want to be triggering elemental reactions for his level 50 talent, which I talked about earlier. The Blackcliff Agate is also probably another good option just because of the crit damage, but the passive is sort of useless if you're just fighting one enemy. But now let's talk about his other 4-star gacha weapons. First off is the Widsith, which is one of the best DPS catalysts, giving you crit damage and a pretty good passive. Now, if you have this weapon R5 and level 90, it's probably going to be your best in slot, so I would recommend using it. Apart from the Widsith though, he doesn't really have many other good 4-star options. If you buy the Battle Pass, the Solar Pearl fits Heizou's kit perfectly, giving you crit rate and a passive that increases your elemental skill and burst damage when you normal attack, and increases your normal attack damage when you use your elemental skill or burst. But now let's talk about some of his 5-star catalyst options. First off is Skyward Atlas. Now, this is just a solid 5-star option because of the high base attack with attack percent as the substat. The passive for this weapon also gives Heizou a 12% elemental damage bonus and a 50% chance to spawn these orbs that track the enemy and deal 160% of your attack at R1. It's an alright catalyst, but I wouldn't say it's his best option. Another good option for him is also Lost Prayer, giving you a base attack a little lower than Skyward Atlas, but in return giving you a crap ton of crit rate. The passive is also pretty good for Heizou's kit, giving an 8% elemental damage bonus every 4 seconds at R1. The max amount of stacks is 4, but to reach 4 stacks, you need to be on field for at least 16 seconds. Now, you might be able to stack it all the way, but it really depends on your team comps, which I'll talk about later. Also, if you're going to be running this weapon, make sure to not use your elemental skill as soon as you swap to him, because you won't be getting the 8% animo damage boost from the weapon. So I would say you should wait at least 4 seconds before you do it, just to get at least 1 stack. Now, this next option could probably be because I'm coping for missing my 50-50 on the weapon banner, but the Memories of Dust actually seems to be a pretty good weapon on him. Now, if you have Zhongli and this weapon, you're set for a main DPS Heizou, but if you don't, then you might be a little screwed like I am. Now, I can level up my Noelle and use her as a healer and a shield, but do I really want to do that? No. Apart from that though, this weapon gives you a 4% attack boost every time you hit an enemy up to 5 times. If you're also protected by a shield, it increases the stacks by 100%. So at R1, you can theoretically get a 40% attack boost on top of the 608 base attack and the extra 50% attack from the substat. But in all honesty, I'm kinda coping hard, so please agree with me when I say this is a good weapon. Now, another weapon is Kagura's Verity, which could be his best in slot, but let me explain. First off, the weapon has a stacking system like the other ones I talked about. When you hit an enemy with your elemental skill, you gain a stack of Kagura Dance, which increases the damage of your next elemental skill by 12% for 16 seconds. When you have 3 stacks, you'll gain a 12% elemental damage bonus. Now, some people are confused about whether this weapon is good on Heizou or not, so let me try to explain it in paint. Heizou's skill is 10 seconds long. A stack from Kagura's Verity lasts 16 seconds. Now, what most people don't know about this weapon is if you cast your elemental skill before the 16 seconds ends, it actually resets that 16-second stack while giving you another stack of Kagura's Dance. The bad part about this weapon is that the full passive for the weapon will only kick in at least 40 seconds into your fight. For the outside world, this is fine most of the time, but for an area like Spiral Abyss, 30 seconds without a 12% elemental damage boost and like a 12% attack boost for your elemental skill can be that edge to not 9-starring your floor. Another thing is, I'm not 100% sure how Spiral works with stacks, but your Kagura Dance stacks are most likely going to reset when you enter a new chamber. But like I said, I'm not sure, so don't take my word for it. But aside from all that, the weapon is a decently high base attack with crit damage as the substat. So if you have the weapon, it's probably going to be your best in slot. But what's just as important as weapons? Team comps. Now, Heizou is similar to Xiao, a sort of selfish main DPS animo character, so for the first team comp that comes to mind is just one of Xiao's best teams, but just replacing Xiao with Heizou. Now, this team with Heizou, Jean, Albedo, and Zhongli is a decently good team for him, but the reason why this probably isn't his best is because one of Heizou's talents requires him to trigger elemental reactions in order to gain declension stacks for his elemental skill. With a team only consisting of Animo and Geo, there's nothing for Heizou to swirl, so this probably wouldn't be his best, but with Albedo providing off-field DPS and Zhongli lowering the enemy's elemental resistance, it's not the worst team. You can also swap out Jean for an off-field sub-DPS like Xingqiu or Zhongling, so Heizou can actually swirl an element, but I don't know, it looks kind of janky. Another team that came to mind is a Heizou Taser team, consisting of him, Xingqiu or Yuan when she comes out, Fischl, and Beidou. Now, normally Sucrose would be here for grouping and boosting the team's elemental mastery instead of Heizou, but Heizou with 4-piece VV to swirl Electro and Hydro might actually be better. Then again, team comps are a complete guess right now because all his stats can change, so take what I say with a grain of salt. Also, I've seen other videos talking about Heizou with 4-piece Thundering Fury in a Taser team. Now, this is a team that can work and one that I've seen work with Sucrose, but I personally wouldn't recommend it, saying that all this does is increase electro elemental reaction damage and reduce your ability's cooldown by 1 second when triggering an electro reaction. In my opinion, it's not really worth putting on your Heizou because he'll be losing out on a ton of damage. The set on him is probably not the worst pick, and again, I can't really test it, so these are all speculations. Now, in conclusion, Heizou is a sick 4-star character and one that I'm really excited for. His kit and animations are really cool, and it seems like he'll be doing some pretty good damage. He also uses the boss from the chasm, so new players won't need to travel all the way to Inazuma if they happen to get him at like AR 20 or something. Anyways, let me know if you guys are excited for this character or if I got anything wrong in this video. I have a lot of friends who are either in love with him or hate him. Apart from that, thanks for watching. I upload every Saturday, so make sure to sub. I'm trying to hit 1K before version 2.7 comes out, so I guess I have like a year. Anyways,